Prior to commencing with the meeting, I wonder if members of council could put their cameras on. All right, good afternoon. And now I'd like to bring the regular scheduled meeting of Township of Langley Council to order. And I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional territories of the Coast Salish peoples, and in particular acknowledge our relationships with the Katzie, Kwantlen, Matsqui, and Semiahmoo First Nations. And with that, we'll move to bring the meeting to order. And the first thing is the adoption and receipt of the agenda items. And I know there's a request by a couple members of council to move I believe it's N1. Where are we here? No, sorry, P1 and P2 to directly after the two delegations. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Ferguson, second by Councillor Davis. Councillor Kunst, your hand is up. Okay. Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? And that carries. Thank you. Next item is the adoption of the minutes of the regular council meeting of March the 7th. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor Arneson, second by Councillor Davis. Any errors or omissions? Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? And carried. Thank you. We now move to delegations. We have two delegations. The first one is Ms. Gabriel Wong, Langley Seniors in Action Transportation Working Group. So welcome here. And for both, there's two delegations. So for both delegations information, you have 5 minutes to present. And I'll kind of give you, when you get to the end, if you're at the 5 minutes, I'll let you know. And then council may have some questions. So welcome here.
In case you were wondering.
I'm not either.
Okay, we'll let you introduce yourselves.
All right.
Thank you.
So I'm Janice McTaggart, and I'm representing the Langley Seniors in Action. I'm on the executive of that group. Used to be called Langley Seniors Community Action Table, and we shortened it for convenience. And we are here, I'll let you introduce yourself. Sorry.
That's quite all right, not a problem. Hello, Mayor and Council. Anthony Cooper-Schmidt, Executive Director with the Langley Senior Resources Society as well, supporting Janice today.
And a member of LSA.
Absolutely.
As well.
Yeah.
Are we finding?
Close.
This is it.
There
Yeah,
we go.
there we go. Yeah. So we have a short slide presentation just to help us make our points, and you will see that we are looking to bring a shuttle service for seniors to the Township of Langley. Transportation has been, do I have to advance this or will you?
Or I can.
Or you can?
I can, I got
Okay.
it, not a problem.
Thank you.
Yep, of course.
So I think you may know that I've been involved in transportation for a long time in the city and township of Langley. This is a new working group, so let's go to the next slide. So certainly transportation has been top of mind for over 10 years with the Langley Seniors in Action. We actually held a summit around social isolation in January of 2021. And out of that group, we formed a couple of working groups, one of which was a transportation group. And of course, it's an opportunity to hear from the seniors. We had a lot of seniors there, as well as service providers, and further recognition of the township's aging population and the associated challenge of this change. In March, we began with our transportation working group. I'm reading from here because my glasses are in my jacket. And this aims to address transportation gaps, connecting improvements in the township transportation network to social isolation, health, and community engagement. I'd like to just mention here that LSA Executive has 2 members who have served on the Access Transit User Advisory Council, and Anthony and Sherry Baker are currently serving from Langley. Many concerns are raised at this committee about seniors and transit, such as access to bathrooms, scenic route on Handy Dart, sometimes an uncomfortable ride, and extensive waiting periods. Now, we have a handout that I'm not sure you got. Are we allowed to hand it out? Okay. So on this handout, you'll notice that we've connected with many stakeholder and supportive groups, such as the Seniors Advisory Council of the Township, United Way, Langley Memorial Hospital Foundation, and other municipalities who provide this service. So how do we know transportation is a barrier for seniors? Knowledge of senior serving staff members at Langley Senior Resources Society and other agencies, surveys that we've conducted through Langley Seniors in Action, experiences of seniors in our community today. And I was just chatting with a 92-year-old who asked me what I was doing today, so I told her, and she said, "Oh, I could really use that." So let me know how it goes, she says. The township has already recognized the importance of meeting the transportation needs of older adults, and Township of Langley Age and Dementia Friendly Action Plan is an example of that. Seniors Advisory Committee has it on their 2022 work plan. An experience we had through Langley Senior Resources Society with a grocery shuttle bus when one of our grocery stores moved away was very positive. It created community amongst the seniors on board, and a trained volunteer bus host was able to distribute relevant information, which was really helpful to the folks. So why a shuttle service? A program could be modeled after successful initiatives in Delta and West Vancouver, which have both run both been civically funded for many years. A senior-specific shuttle in the township would provide free and accessible transportation around the township, a reliable service to the places they need to get to for business, shopping, and healthcare, social connection with other seniors to reduce isolation and loneliness, and access to senior-specific resources and information. And the Langley Hospital Foundation is currently examining how many seniors miss appointments at the hospital due to a lack of transportation, so we're waiting on that information. So what's the end goal? Improving the quality of life for seniors in the Township of Langley. Independence, freedom, and choice, keeping seniors as independent as possible in their homes for longer, which is Fraser Health's focus at the moment. Social, economic, and health-related benefits. We can reduce the fear and harm of driving cessation, which is a really big focus of the United Way right now. And it's an affordable option for seniors to stay engaged in the community and become purposeful citizens. They can volunteer, they can shop, they can get to their healthcare appointments and become more socially engaged.
Your 5 minutes is just up. If you can wrap up. that'd be
I'm
great.
done.
Thanks. Well, see, perfect timing.
Perfect timing.
That was your.
Good.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. I do have some questions from council. Councilor Richter?
Hey, so can I talk now?
Yes.
I'm just not used to all this
It's
technology.
the hybrid version. And,
Exactly.
we have here.
Okay, thank you. I had a question with regards to the funding for this. Have you costed it out? How much will it be? And are you asking us to contribute to this? And if so, how much?
At this point, I think we're asking for staff to get involved from the township to help us with some of those pieces. We have not costed it out, but in terms of our conversations with Delta, we have a bit of a sense of what it would cost. I think our hope is to partner with people who own buses. You will remember the bus co-op, and I think that didn't succeed because we weren't all on the same page about community transportation. Some of the partners were more interested in their own cohort of seniors at their care homes. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And we also had an experiment run back probably about almost a decade ago with a bus tour, like a private bus running around the Aldergrove area, and that was not a very successful.
It wasn't successful, no.
Yeah.
I know that. And so of the surveys that we've done, didn't we have 750 people respond to a survey? And a lot of those people are still driving, but the issue of giving up your license is a huge thing if you don't have other options. Mm-hmm. And volunteer drivers can only do so much, and they tend to focus on medical appointments and banking and income tax and things like that, whereas social appointments are a little less available. So I think that would be the hope, that we could capture more people to engage socially.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councilor Ferguson?
Well, thank you for coming, Janice and Anthony. You guys are everywhere now, it seems. And Janet, you guys should keep going. I don't know how you do it. You just everything. You're involved with everything. But I know this
I'm
is
supposed
another.
to be retired.
That's what I thought. Anyway, the community appreciates all the work that you and your team
Thank
do.
you. Yeah.
And as I say, now the first thing I want to say, I think we should also sit down with the city as well, the city of Langley, and do the president. Because we're kind of like one Langley's.
Yep.
And I'm also thinking out loud as I sit here, there's a time that some of the local dealerships wouldn't mind donating things, a vehicle or something, so they get a little bit of advertising on there.
Yeah.
And also getting some kind of either grants or others from other governments, province or feds. Yep. And also some of the people from the developing community are sometimes interested in helping out a bit as well. Yep. So you've got an excellent project. I'd love to sit down, council sit down with our staff and work it through. Mm-hmm. We all know the pluses and minuses last time. And
yep.
I remember one time when I was on the board of the senior centers,
yes.
the bus broke down.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
huge costs in running buses.
Keep doing what you're doing. It's an excellent initiative, and we appreciate your efforts. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Arneson?
Yes, thank you very much for coming today. And I know that you're not Gabrielle because she's actually on our Seniors Advisory Committee. And so, but I do appreciate you're here on her behalf as well as your working group, because we have discussed this a lot, as you know, and you've put a lot of effort into this. And just to remind council, there has been a long-standing discussion and a variety of attempts to strategize how best to achieve this goal. One thing I would say about our current situation is the Township of Langley has recently adopted a social sustainability framework and strategy. Yes. And so for me, this is very much tied into not only what we're doing at the Seniors Advisory Committee, but also then very much supported. So I am interested in what other communities have been able to do, and yes. I know that there's a motion on the table.
Yes.
And I do think that this is something whose time has come, that we need to consider this, but we also have to hear from staff, obviously,
Right.
about what that could look like, further to Councillor Richter's questions about funding and things like that. And I personally see that there is a potential role for commercial entities, for example, to do that, because I can't help but notice as a senior, every time I go to Murrayville on Thursday, it's totally full of seniors who are going there to get their 10% discount, including myself, and that they're shuttle buses of a variety of types that
Yes.
have bought them there. Now, those, of course, are Chartwell, et cetera, et cetera. But I do think that there's a role for our community, but we need to tailor it to our circumstance.
Yes, you have to live at Chartwell to make use of that.
Okay, well, I'm not quite there yet, but maybe one of these days. Thank you so much for coming. It's
you bet.
appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Long?
I don't think I'll be able to afford to be at Chartwell, as nice as it is. But and I was just curious because it's mentioned of our seniors committee, right? That this is also on their work program. So I just want to, maybe you can explain, is this in parallel to what the committee's up to, or you're sort of jumping ahead a little bit? Or because, I mean, at the committee level, there should be some resources to flush this out a little bit more. Like
Yeah,
some
I think we
refreshments.
did a presentation. Gabrielle did a presentation. I'm not just sure about the actual action plan, but I was told that it is on the action plan for the seniors advisory.
So they're supportive of the concept, but
Yes.
there hasn't been any
No,
down or
no.
wheels on the road kind of
Nothing
work.
further, no.
Okay, well, anyway, thanks for your presentation. Very
Yeah,
interesting.
You bet.
Great, thank you. There's no further questions, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, the next delegation is Mr. Ray Mostat.
Mayor Froese and councillors. I represent a group regarding the Old Yale Park and what's happening to it. Just want to get a show of hands of who's here because of the park. So this is a representation of the feelings of the local community. Before I begin, though, I'd like to just show you a couple of photos that I took, one being before the actual activity began. We need number one.
You just have to give me 2 secs.
Oh, 2 secs, all right. Okay, so this is the before. It was up there.
Yeah, hang on.
I just reset the timer, so
You'll take-
you'll get your 5 minutes, not to worry.
Okay, so the first one you want to see, 11:90.
That one there, yeah. So here we are. This is, if you don't know the park, if you've not been there, but it's a very natural setting. And this is, you would hardly know that this was a park except for the pathway that's there. But this is a picture that was taken before activity began. And so let's go to the next one. And you can see either one of them will do. This is what's happened now. Many of the trees, I counted 80 plus stumps that are left in that small portion of ground. And the next one shows you a bit more of what's going on. But as a resident of Langley of 48 years, 28 of those years have been on 224th, right across from where the park is. And the Old Yale Park has been, we've been getting feedback from our community. The Works Yard wants to put a parking lot in that facility. But many of us don't feel that it's appropriate in that spot. What was most upsetting about this is that there was a lack of communication about what was being planned. In the past, when proposals were for work to be done, the local community was alerted. We had notices sent out. We were asked to attend meetings that would allow us to give input as to what we felt about the proposal. This time, not a word. All of a sudden, there was a digger and chainsaws doing their worst. After phone call to Councillor Richter, the demolition stopped. Much damage has been done, as you can see by the picture. But it didn't stop there. The next day, they were back again. This time, Councillor Ferguson managed to get it stopped. And as it turned out, the next day was the beginning of bird nesting season. So that kind of put a stop to it altogether. So why not a parking lot? And this is a proposed parking lot that would take up a portion of our park. It would just be for the sole use of the operation center. First of all, the land is in question is in the ALR designation. And so parking lots don't fit that criteria. The use of gravel and the word temporary doesn't really work. In 2010, a parking lot was proposed, but because of pushback from the community, the plan was scrapped. 12 years later, here we are, back at it again, and if that parking lot had gone in, it would still be here and would be asked for more space to take more of the park. This park is unique. It was a farm years ago, except for some trails. It still looks the same as its original state. It got park designation a few years ago, and what a stroke of genius that was. Thank you very much. Now we have trails, dog off-leash area, community garden, benches, ponds, and many trees have been planted. All this without disturbing the ecosystem. There's rabbits and birds, coyotes, rodents, frogs, so many frogs, not to mention bugs and insects. So what difference will a quarter acre make to all of this? Would a person put a bathtub in their front room? This doesn't fit. It's just not something that should be in our park. The coming and going on traffic on 224th would be increased. The many cedar trees, and you can't see them in the picture now, but there was a whole bank of them. They were planted years ago, and now they stand 10 to 20 feet tall and give a visual blockage between the park and the works yard. That would be gone. Is there a parking problem? Yes, of course. But we strongly believe this is not the solution. Money spent on the park should be to enhance the park rather than destroying it. I hope you'll support Councillor Ferguson's motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I don't see any questions from council, so thank you. Oh, I've got Councillor Richter. I just put her hand up. Councillor Richter, and then Ferguson.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for your delegation today. We've been given some material on table, which you probably haven't seen. And I'm looking at a map on page 35, which does show proposed paving in that area. And I was just wondering if you've yourself have ever seen a map of the park that shows proposed paving there.
Well, they stress, well, not the paving, they stress it's going to be a gravel parking lot, temporary gravel parking lot, which is going to be for the sole use of the parks or for the works yard, not for any other purpose.
Yeah.
So this land is still designated as ALR, and in fact, talking to the ALC, they say this would not be possible to put a parking lot in there because it doesn't fall within the criteria.
So we would have to have approval from ALC in order to put that parking lot in the first place.
Yes.
Well, that's an interesting.
And yet here we are forging ahead with it, so
Yeah.
that's really upsetting.
I was out last weekend and I walked the area, and I was interested to note that it looks like there's a stream in there where the trees have been cut down.
There looks like a drainage ditch.
Yeah.
Has been put in there, and there's pipes that lead away from that area, yes.
Okay. So has that been there for a while?
Well, I don't know how long that's been there. I know some drainage was put in because it's very wet. There's a lot of wetlands, and so the frogs love it in there, and a lot of other stuff goes in there too. And so certainly drainage is an issue, not an issue, but it's just that there has been drainage put in, and even today I noticed them out there fixing up some of the drains to try and take away some of the water that ends up there over the pathways.
So,
I don't
yeah,
think there's a stream as such going through there, as far as a creek is concerned.
okay, because that was my question, since a
see.
lot of the trees were cut down from top of bank, and
Yes, I didn't.
we wouldn't allow private people to do that. Why would we do it ourselves?
That should be a question of staff, I think.
Exactly.
That'd be a question
Yeah.
for staff, not for.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mossad, Ray and Bonnie, whenever the phone rings, you guys have been there a long time, you've got a knowledge of the area, and I believe from my recollection, the old Cochrane property that was, went to the Land Commission and with the concept of putting an operations center with leaving that parcel alone, that part. And it's, as you just elegantly stated, what's happened with dog parks, trails, trees, and the animals that live in the area, certainly. So I guess the mayor has acknowledged that this will be your discussion, your topic. My motion will come after the delegations. The first one will be the seniors, second will be yours. And there'll be a lot of discussion, I'm sure, from this council about what we should do and how we should proceed. And we do appreciate all the emails and the phone calls and things from your community, because council has to make decisions about these kind of things as well, and we have questions as well. So thank you for coming, and we appreciate all your efforts from you and your neighbors tonight.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. No, a couple more. Councilor Arneson, if you don't mind.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you very much for coming. It's very much appreciated, and I would echo those comments about how we've appreciated hearing from the community. As I realized, this little jewel that's in this area is very much enjoyed by the neighbors, but not necessarily known in the same way that other community parks are. But I would note that it is actually a wetland park, and therefore its designation and the conditions you're describing are very much unique, and I would say very much in tune with the way that the township has gone forward most recently, because we are challenged to preserve wetlands, we are challenged to preserve biodiversity and have habitat, etc. So I do understand the community concern. My question actually today is, I know that there's a sentiment that nobody was engaged in this process. So I just, relative to any other kinds of discussions about this, would it be the case that you're not aware of any considerations with a discussion with the neighbors in particular about how to accommodate the parking prior to this going forward?
Well, parking has been an issue. In fact, I took the opportunity to talk to all the neighbors that live on 224th, because they're the ones that are impacted primarily by the cars that are parked on 24th because of the overflow from the works yard. And none of them thought that the parking lot in the park was a good idea. They felt there's got to be another way of doing this. There's some other remedy, either because if you look at the yard where the works yard is, that's what I call it. It's if you look in there during the day, there's parking everywhere because all the trucks are gone. So would it be possible for people that are working there, they come, they take their truck, they put the car there, and away they go. So there's probably 15, 20 spots right there that could be accommodated. And that's just sort of off the top of my head. So as far as, and other things have been done because 224, or some of the off-streets were a problem, so they changed the parking there, so there was only 2-hour parking to try and minimize that. So parking has been a problem for a long time.
Thank
I
you.
don't know if I've answered the question or not, but are you asking whether we knew about this at all? The only way we found out was one day I went to the park, and here's these red streamers, these markers over where this lot was going to go. So I talked to my neighbor about it, and it so happens she happened to be over at the yard one day and talked to one of the workers, and they said, she asked, what's going on over there at the park in the corner? Oh, we're building a parking lot in there. And so at that point, I phoned Aaron, I think it is, and he said, yes, well, we have the parking problem, we're going to use that. And I said, well, we've objected this before, we don't know anything about this. And so it was the day after that the machinery all moved in and away they went. So there was no regard to what was said. So, and there was a map that actually our neighbor got about it, but that was it. Then we distributed it through all 200 neighbors in our community, and then we sent another leaflet out in our community to let them know what was going on, because otherwise we wouldn't have known.
Thank you. Councillor Long.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, so I was just curious on the earlier question from Councillor Richter, the map that we've got that shows the area. It doesn't say anything about paving on it, but it does show a parking lot.
Yeah,
Has everybody seen that?
I can't see that well enough
Well,
from here to
but-
see if
but you-
that's the
yeah,
one.
okay.
But the only one I've seen is a section that's cordoned off, or on the map that goes, there's Telus building there, and then it just goes straight east from there and encompasses about a quarter acre.
All right. Well, as you see, we've varied the agenda. The mayor's allowed that, and we're going to discuss it. But I mean, we're going to have to get some information too. Even Councillor Ferguson has agreed that we don't have all the information, and obviously none of us really have it all either. And I don't know if staff are going to be prepared to give a full presentation or anything either. But I just wanted to give Your Worship heads up to the staff that maybe that map could be displayed, because it does show that the area is very tiny, and it also shows other parking areas in the park. So there's some confusion for sure whether parking is allowed or not, because there is a public parking, and I don't know if this parking lot would be to help with more parking, so more people can use the park. I don't know, but
Well,
if you
that-
haven't,
yeah,
if you haven't seen this map, then maybe it would be good that we show that today somehow.
When we have the discussion, then
Yeah,
that'd be the time to ask that.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, thank
Thanks,
you.
Your Worship.
And I got Councillor Richter, another question.
Just a follow-up question. Why, I was there in the park on a Saturday, and I noticed that the parking lot for the park, which is on the east side, there was a lot of empty space in there. From your perspective, living in the neighborhood, is that parking lot that's there already ever full? Or is it?
I wouldn't say it comes and goes, because people that bring their dogs, because it's not just our place of walkers that have their dogs, people come from outside the area to walk their dogs there, so they park there. People from have the gardens, have their little garden plots there, they'll go and park there so they can go work in their garden. So it depends, like during the winter, not so much. In the summer, you're gonna find a lot more people are there because they're dealing with with that. So it's, the parking, that part of the parking, yeah, I would say it's not full. It's not well designated. It's just an area that's been set aside so their vehicles can come and go, as far as to maintain the pathways and bring in dirt and stuff for the garden. And Leps is also there, because they have a facility, chained off area, fenced off area where they keep their supplies and that sort of thing. So they have people coming and going all the time as well.
Yeah, I guess the question, or where I was going, is would that parking lot that's already there be adequate for overflow parking for township employees
some.
Monday to Friday during regular working hours?
Some probably could.
So just to clarify then, when people are there with their community gardens and their dog off leash activities, is it mostly the evenings and weekends? Hard to say.
It varies a lot.
Yeah.
I can look out my window onto the park, which I often do, and that's how I can keep an eye on what's going on. And there's almost somebody on the park all the time, as far as on the trails and whatnot, whether they're just walking in out of this field, out of the community, or some will park on 224th and go in on those little access. There's two access spots there where they can get in as well. Mm-hmm. So the parking at that you're referring to, I would say no, but it's not full all the time, no. Okay. But it'll be coming and going. It just depends on people's shifts and all kinds of things. So it's all day, it changes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I don't have any further questions here, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we'll move on to other business. We're just going to deal with P1 and P2 and other business, and then we'll go back to other business at the end of the meeting. So at this point, Councillor Kunst, you have a notice of motion.
Sure.
Is your mic on? There you go.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'll just move the motion and then speak to it.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Davis seconds it. So go ahead, Councillor Richter. Sorry, Councillor Kunst.
Thank you. Yeah, so over a year ago, I attended a summit on social isolation that was put on by the Langley Seniors in Action. At the end of that, there was a call to action, and I decided to join this transportation working group. With over a year of monthly meetings, consultation with other municipalities successfully doing this, as well as a presentation to the Seniors Advisory Committee, we thought an important next step would be a presentation to this council. So I don't need to read all the whereases, they're there for you, but I did want to highlight that transportation emerged as a key challenge during the community engagement to support the 2021 Age and Dementia Friendly Action Plan, with places and mobility a priority area. So I hope other members of council would support getting a report from staff to explore the feasibility of a senior shuttle and/or ways to support this initiative for our seniors in the Township of Langley. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Richter.
Yeah, so if we refer this to staff to look at, which I think is probably a good idea, will staff also be looking at the costs of such a shuttle? Because I think we really need to have a good handle on what this will cost.
Yeah, so I maybe Mr. Backen can help out, but I would think that the report would explore some of the financial costs of this, and also relationship with other agencies. TransLink is responsible for transportation, so I know when we did the Aldergrove shuttle that you mentioned a long time ago, it went through TransLink and they did the approval for the pilot project. So certainly I think staff would be exploring all of that and bringing that back to council. But Mr. Backen, if maybe you can provide a little more background.
That's correct, Your Worship. I think because of the use of the term feasibility, that would include a broader analysis that would look at the feasibility from both the practicality, from a equipment and from a financial perspective. So that would be sufficient. And I think you're referencing the jurisdiction of TransLink to actually operate and deal with any sort of buses or public transportation that would have to be considered as well as part of that process.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Whitmarsh.
Yes, thank you. I don't know if, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, so I just wanted to say this is a great initiative, and I really appreciate the motion brought forward by Councillor Kunst. I think that this is certainly an important area for us to consider, and you know, like Councillor Richter, I certainly want to know the costs and what the implications would be for us, but overall, I think it's a great idea, and I hope that council does support it to get more information. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ferguson.
Hope that, thank you, and I think it's a great idea. It's been tried once before, and we wanted to make it a complete community situation where all the interested parties can get involved. And I do appreciate the work done by the Seniors in Action and Janice and Anthony and the team. There's a number of people involved. And again, to explore the idea of getting donations of vehicles, donations from other levels of government, and also probably reaching out to the public, including business and development community. Those are all things that would be a win-win-win for everybody, and of course, if nothing else, but involve the city of Langley as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Arneson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I'm very much in support of this, and also want to thank Councillor Kuntz for bringing it forward. I understand that there are challenges, and we've had historic challenges, but I'm a person who looks at a changing and evolving landscape that we have in the township. We are projected to have, in the very near future, 1/3 of our community to be seniors. And so to look at that and say, how are we planning to make sure that those individuals have a quality of life in our community is very important, because we have to plan, that's our job. And so planning often requires doing research, finding out what would be possible. Certainly there's models in other communities, so I'm just very supportive of this, because I know in saying yes today doesn't necessarily mean we're going to go ahead and do that, but how can we take a step forward if we don't have all the necessary information?
Okay, thank you. Okay, I don't see any further discussion, so I will call the question. All those in favor and opposed? It carries unanimously. Okay, so move on to P2, and Councillor Ferguson, you have the notice of motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to make it very quick. Be it resolved that the construction of a parking lot clearing and tree removal of Old Yale Park at the Operations Center cease and desist immediately, and that a new plan be put in place to address staff parking that would be acceptable to the residents of the Murrayville neighborhood affected by the Operations Center site, and I would so move.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Kuntz seconds it.
In my only point on speaking discussion, thank you,
Yeah,
Mr. Mayor.
go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry for interrupting you. Is the fact that we have heard loud and clear some of the concerns. I know that there will be discussion at this table. Parks are important. I'll say it again. Parks are important, and the way we address parks and the way we plan parks are important as well. So I know there'll be discussion by members of this council as well, and I think that's important. And I'm waiting to hear from that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Davis.
Thank you. Okay, I've just written down, I tend to get a little off track, so I've written down a few things here. I'd just like to, I'm just going to read it first and then. Thank you to everyone who has come out and sent letters expressing their concern. I've had many emails. I love to see people are so involved in the neighborhood. I think, that unless I'm wrong, we've already looking at the motion, we've already stopped the project and put it on hold, which is a good thing. I went out around the week of the 10th of March and was able to see firsthand, and 2 members of staff gave me a tour of what's been going on. So I was able to see it. I think this, unfortunately, got ahead of us. Looking back, we should have let everybody know what our intentions were, not what we were going to do, but it's like a signal light on a car. You turn it on to let everyone know what you want to do. It's not to tell them what you're doing. And to know what our intentions were. I had a phone call this morning from a resident who used this park on a weekly basis. The nice part of the conversation was he brought concerns and he brought solutions. And but anyhow, his concerns were there's very few parks in this area that are multi-use. Multi-use. This is a dog park, a walker, bike riders, gardeners use this park. So it's a multi-use park. Ray, I'm sorry, I forgot your last name, but Ray talked about 2010. This was talked about. Maybe even in between there, this was maybe talked about at a meeting here at the township, and it was never acted upon about this problem. So this is not a new problem, but it is a new attempt at putting it. When I visited the area a few weeks ago, I saw firsthand, because I drove in to the yards compartment, and I don't know if I was supposed to be there or not, but I drove all the way around thinking that I could see it from the right side, and I see that there was hustle bustle all over. There was trucks, there was employees. The township has grown out of too big for this area to operate out of. Not too big to operate out of it, but we've just got too many cows in the barn. So I'm just going to say, let's leave the park alone. Now I'll go to what his solutions were. I just want to give credit where credit's due, because this was from a resident who uses the park. This is a bigger picture. We need a satellite site. And I've heard at this table that a satellite site in North Langley, or even in Aldergrove, what it would do is it would allow the trucks that you talked about to go there, to be there, would make it'd be more efficient. The people wouldn't have to have more parking to go there, because they'd go there to park because it'd be another site. And they wouldn't have to drive back and forth. Anyhow, so this is the big picture, but this is a very expensive problem to solve. It's not like parking in the parking lot over at the park, which I don't think is a good idea, and it's not taking your truck out and putting your car in there, because those are just Band-Aids. Anyhow, I think that more time needs to be spent on this, and I know we've shut it down now, but more time needs to be spent on this, and I know I have heard talk about this, but it's going to cost money, and it's got to be put through the budget and all that. And I just wonder if Councillor Ferguson, could we tweak this motion to direct staff to look into a satellite site and fast track this solution, or not so much fast track it, but let us know what's going on, so that you guys know what's going on, so that we can solve this problem, because I don't know if putting a temporary parking lot, although it seems very simple, but it just to put in some parking there, it does, just leave the parks alone. We need the parks there, and yeah, so that's, anyhow, so I just wonder if, the question is Councillor Ferguson, because your motion reads that we let the residents, I'm going to get in trouble here. What should I say? Let the residents that is suitable for you, but actually this problem is management problem. We need to deal with it, and we need to make it so that you don't even have to worry, because the park's going to be there for you. So is there any way you can we do that? Can we tweak your?
If I could, I'll speak to that, and then I'll go to.
Sure. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks. So, Mr. Back, and I think the intent, there is, in this motion, it says a new plan be put in place to address staff parking. I think that's in the area, and if it's going to be in the area, it'd be acceptable to the residents of Murrayville. That's what I interpret it to be. I think what Councillor Davis was getting at is also a more longer range, but that could be a separate motion. I think we're looking at it, maybe just give a real quick update on where we are with looking at satellite and moving some of the staff away to reduce some of the pressures on that building, which is kind of reaching capacity.
Thank you, Your Worship. You're correct. The long-term solution would be a satellite works yard, perhaps one or two in different parts of the municipality. That's been addressed, I think, through some of the analysis that's been prepared as part of the budget processes. I don't think it was successful this year, but in part it's difficult to find land, I think, that would meet the current zoning conditions. So that could either be recognized as already being part of the work plan, or it could be done by way of a separate motion.
Okay, thank you. So I think if we want to do something, and there's no great urgency to have it right on top of this motion, but it's important. And so it could be either done in this meeting or work with staff, prepare a motion, bring it forward to look at satellite offices. But I think we're already doing that, and staff are already doing that. So I think that, sure, go ahead, Councillor Davis. Yeah.
The reason I'm worried about that is because we want to solve this problem, but it's a bigger problem. And if we pass Mr. Councillor Ferguson's motion, then we're going to start to go out to the public and say, well, what do you guys want? And we're going to do all that when really maybe we can solve the problem without doing that. And I'm not trying to poo-poo the motion, but I'm just...
Yeah, Mr. Back.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Your Worship, I think there's a short-term issue and the long-term issue. I think Councillor Ferguson's motion certainly addresses the short-term issue, which is, as we go back in time, and as the delegation advised, there was some street parking issues. There was a direction to look at other parking options. There was this option, which is not acceptable. So I think what follows from this motion is we'd have to look at other short-term options, which could be rental, leasing of land in the vicinity until we can actually proceed with the satellite works yards. The only challenge with the satellite works yards is, of course, they're properly designated industrial, and industrial land right now is very expensive on a per acre basis. So that's going to be a significant budget issue for us going forward, and it's something that I think we are targeting some properties. We're watching the properties and hoping that they may come up through development, but we don't have a timeline for that, whether it's going to be 1 year or 2 years. Or 3 years, we simply don't know that. So it does flow, and perhaps if the current work program and analysis is not sufficient, a separate motion might be easier to try to expedite that process.
Okay, thank you. All right, Councillor Richter.
Yeah, this has opened up a lot of discussion, which is good. And we have a parking option that was being developed, which probably would have cost $500,000. And if we start looking at a satellite operations center, that's going to be what, $50+ million? So there is definitely a cost question here. But with regards to the motion, I think the motion is somewhat incomplete. And I'd like to propose some amendments to it, but I'll wait till everybody's had a chance to talk. From the first part, there's already been removal, and as Mr. Mostad has said, he's counted about 80 trees in there that have come out. Those have to be replaced. That habitat has to be restored. So that's got to be part of this motion, a habitat or a restoration plan be developed and implemented. The other thing that's missing in this motion, I think, is that the residents should be consulted via a public open house before we attempt any restoration work so that they're happy with what it is that's being proposed. Now, what I'm finding a bit of a pattern here that I'm a little bit concerned about is that this is not the only park that's been tampered with in the last little while. Williams Park has also had a major new trail installed with a staircase right on a property line, and none of the neighbors were informed that this work was going to be happening. So it seems to me we need a policy that makes it very clear to staff going forward that you will not construct works in parks unless there has been a public open house held for the residents who use the park to have a see and a say. So those are my comments, and Mr. Mayor, I'll wait until everyone's gone through so that I can bring forward some suggested amendments.
Thank you. Councillor Woodward.
Yeah, thanks. I want to thank the delegate here too. I haven't had a chance to talk to you yet, but I'll make sure I get a chance to do that. Thank for all the emails too that we got as well. I went up there and had a look at it, and yeah, I was certainly a bit surprised to have learned about it from a resident, maybe not learned about it in a memo or some other communication. I think in the future, I think it would be helpful to recognize that if there is a parking challenge and there's a need for it, that there's some consultation in advance of that to see if that's the solution, or potentially we might be looking at funding something better, more long-term and permanent, rather than funding something as temporary. One of my things is I don't really like funding things that are temporary. I'd rather spend a little bit more and make it permanent. And you know, I've toured the works yard, and I recognize the challenge with the township growing at the rate that it is and trying to maintain it, and not having that works yard expansion and no ability to expand it. So I'm sensitive to the need for additional parking, for additional staff, for additional maintenance requirements over the years. You know, one example of another idea to explore might be the removal of the burn building, for example, and free up some space with that. There's, I think, a long-term plan to relocate that anyway. Perhaps that some other training facilities elsewhere could be leased for some period of time, and that could be removed and made parking. So I think there's a number of ideas to potentially explore that it's going to be hard to put into this motion. So, Mr. Mayor, if you may, I had a question about how Mr. Backen would interpret this to put a new plan in place. Like, what would the action be taken by staff if this is passed as is?
Mr. Backen.
The plan would focus on trying to relocate the parking to meet the immediate concerns. I think it's understood that there'd be some remediation of the property, but that can certainly be specified by council. And the long-term issue still awaits us, which is in terms of the cost, or the cost and location of a satellite works yard, one or two of them, and that's something that, as we referenced, might be part of a separate motion.
Yeah, so I would welcome something like that. I think I've had some conversations with Mr. Backen over the years about the long-term maintenance needs, and one of the challenges, of course, is a new maintenance yard isn't a very sexy project for politicians. So this is one of the reasons that maybe it drags on for some period of time. So I think that the conversation is here now to see what the long-term needs are going to be, and it's going to be costly, I think, as well, for a new location and an expansion of that. Additional here, though, I did have one, again, with the motion, again, trying to make sure that we make some progress here. Acceptable to the residents of the Murrayville neighborhood. I was a little concerned when I read that maybe a plan is acceptable to some residents and the plan isn't, and a different plan is acceptable to some and not to others. And so I was a little concerned about passing this as is. How do you make it acceptable to everyone? Depending on different solutions, may not be acceptable to some different residents of Murrayville. So I'd like maybe the mover can entertain some changes to that, just so we don't, acceptable to the residents of Murrayville. I think who's going to disagree with that? But if you have different plans that come forward and some oppose it, I think that maybe we necessitate a solution that has to occur within the works yard itself, and maybe some reconfiguration or removal of some aspects or relocation of some aspects, rather than maybe something ends up on the street or on another piece of property nearby. So that's what I was wondering, how that would also be interpreted. How does Mr. Backen come up with a plan acceptable to the residents of Murrayville, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah. So I know Councilor Richter had mentioned some amendments maybe at that time. It could be changed a little bit or added, rather than acceptable to residents, that new plan be put in place to address staff parking for council's consideration, and including consultation with the community of some sort. And then that would come back. It's not reliant, because you're right. You'll have there's 20 people here with 20 different acceptable solutions. So it still has to come to us for discussion. So perhaps when that amendment comes, we could address it.
Yeah. So I think I'd like to focus a bit on the process here, how this happened, and then a better process from here, learning from it. And I think that I would be quite happy to work on a restoration plan, perhaps taking into consideration tree replacements. We get a lot of funding in tree replacements from development with not a lot of land to plant them. So it seems like an opportunity to maybe look at some larger upgrades to this park as well, along with this, and find a solution to the parking problem that I think I would like to see contained to Murrayville, and then have a long-term plan for the maintenance needs of the township. Thanks.
Thanks. Councilor Arneson?
Yes, thank you, Worship. I concur with a lot of the comments that have been made. I think it's a good start to discuss what we want to do with after the cessation of the activities. And of course, bird nesting season would put an end to that, at least for a brief time anyways. But I think it's really valuable at this point to consider. And in my opinion, if we're going to do some rehabilitation, I would take the money from the fund to build the parking lot and just invest it directly in the rehabilitation of what's happened there. Because I think that at this point, the park itself has been degraded. I don't think there could be any argument, in fact, that taking out trees like this without an adequate environmental strategy or plan, I don't know how anybody could consider it, it's just slicing off a little piece of it and making a parking lot. I don't think that that would be true from an ecological point of view. So I think that there should be some funding for that right away, and it should happen right away. I think we have LEPs and others that could help to inform that. Of course, the community can be advising as to what they would like to see there. I think there's maybe some enhancements that would go along with that. My comment about any amendments to it would, prior to considering any outside kind of satellite operation, I think we need to really focus attention on the reconfiguration, if there's any potential on that site to remove elements that are not rational at this point to make way for more parking. Because I don't know when the last time was. I'm not an expert, obviously, in running works yards. And further to Councillor Woodward's point, we have to find a way to make this sexy. I don't know what it is. However, if this side of the thing is not that interesting, just because the subject matter seems to be a bit dry. But to me, this is a really good indication of why it's critically important as we continue to grow. We need to have these kind of discussions, and certainly our parklands are at a premium. So I don't see that it is a valuable exercise to take away from any of the parkland that's currently available there. So I think in terms of amendments, first of all, make sure that there's no other parking spots that can be eked out on that site. But I did have actually a specific question regarding opportunities for a short-term parking arrangement with maybe some of the neighboring properties. So the commercial properties that are to the north of that, I wondered if there is any potential to consider, because they do have truck access, and I don't know if that's something that's been discussed or considered as to whether or not there is some portion of their property that could be rented to the township for the duration. Because I understand there's pressures, but at the same time, I believe that it would be helpful to try and figure out what the best resolution to the problem is. And if that could be of a short-term interest while we're looking at the longer-term interest, I think that'd be helpful. So that's my question, if we've looked into that.
Thank you. Mr. Backen, I think the motion kind of works, since that Mr. Backen mentioned looking at neighboring properties for lease. Mr. Swag?
Thank you, through your worship. Yes, indeed, we've looked at a number of options throughout the years. We already are leasing a property on the southeast corner of 48th Avenue and 224th Street. We continue to look for other opportunities that may arise on the open market, either purchase or rent, but quite challenging from a financial perspective. With respect to the budget process, as Mr. Backen referenced, the fire training facility and burn building is in the 2022 to 2026 budget process, but currently funded in the 2023 year for feasibility study, same as the acquisition of the satellite yard in 2023 as well. Just starting to look at that, but again, as Mr. Backen referenced, it keeps getting deferred because of financial restrictions and limitations.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Whitmarsh. You're muted. Oh, there you go.
Well, thank you. Thanks very much, and I appreciate all the people that have shown up on this topic, and I really appreciate the information that's come forward. Certainly, it's pretty clear that this isn't a strategy going forward, and that I'm glad that Councillor Ferguson has brought this forward to stop this, and appreciate the other councillors in making this happen. I think, in fairness, though, I do want to, not throw staff entirely under the bus here. I think that the report does indicate that staff did plan on it being definitely temporary, and when the parking lot was no longer needed, it would be restored. That was pretty clear. It does indicate in the report that there's 15 significant trees defined by the 20 centimeter DBH, and that they would be replaced at a 2-to-1 ratio, and planted in such a way as to make it not to be so the parking lot's not really seen from the parking area. So I think there were things that were put in place recognizing the temporary nature of this, and certainly looking at the significant cost. However, saying that, the communication strategy wasn't very effective, and it sounds like people didn't really know what was happening, didn't have opportunity for input. So I certainly feel that's an area that we could definitely be improving on. I appreciate the comments made by most of the members of council on this, and I think that certainly we have a short-term and a long-term solution, and we need to come up with a short-term solution and make that as cost-effective as possible, while council will have to work hard to helping with the long-term solution when it comes to the budget decisions. And I think that's important. And I would agree with Councillor Woodward. I think that some of the comments some of the language, I would say, in the motion could be changed to, rather than having a parking lot acceptable or parking strategy acceptable to the residents, instead be something has gotten public input. And then we as a council would be able to look at that public input and see the kinds of information we have that would help us to make better decisions. So I'm in support of the motion generally, but I think it could be just tightened a little bit, and I appreciate it coming forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Long.
Yeah, but I don't want to muck around with the wording. I don't think it really matters. I mean, everybody knows what we're here for. There's been a concern by the public. I asked if everyone had seen the map. I don't know if staff could put it up, because I'm not advocating one way or another. I appreciate everybody coming out. I appreciate the concern. I appreciate the value of parkland and everything else. But when I look at the map, it's a very, very small area. Now, I'm not trying to say it's a good thing, and I see heads nodding or shaking, but this is not the way that an organization of our size should be operating, and that council's going to decide which pieces are going to stay and not. Every time we've done this, while I've been on term, it's become a bit of a disaster. So we have staff. The motion should be referred to them. We need to hear their side, find out what their plans have been, see the map. I don't know if it can still come up so that people can understand what was being proposed. As Councillor Whitmarsh mentioned, there was in the report that I saw, which was a memo that came after the first few emails came from you folks, I guess, was that there was a huge amount of tree replacement going to go in there. And then, of course, there's the history of this from 10 or 12 years ago, which I can vaguely remember, and I can't remember really what the ultimate solution was, but there's definitely some confusion here, and there's some concern, most definitely, and council should be giving direction to staff to come forward with some solutions. But I would rather not spend, Your Worship, a whole pile of the day trying to plan it here at this table, because that's not what our expertise is. I have a term for it, it's called mucky muck, which is everybody here thinks that they're an expert, but none of us are. So we do have experts on staff, and we do have the ability to examine this issue and come up with solutions that would be acceptable, hopefully, to everybody, and those are the ones that council should be given direction to pursue. So you're going to entertain amendments, Your Worship. Why not just refer the whole thing to staff to come back for a full presentation, not necessarily today, but whenever they're prepared to, and we can get to the bottom of all the different sides of this particular challenge that we face.
Okay, thank you. So the mover is next up on the list. So Councillor Ferguson, you've kind of heard the discussion. I know you wanted to hear the discussion first. So there's a few options there. If you'd like to make an amendment or referral based on the discussions that council's had, have staff come back. So I think with the nesting season, there's no more construction being happening. Nothing's going to happen for now anyways. Mr. Backen's nodding. So we could take that time. So I'll leave it to you, Councillor Ferguson. It is your
Well, I think that other members have prepared some interesting comments, which I don't think is a waste of time. I actually think this is a good time to sit back and look at how we as a council can make decisions for the benefit of the whole community. And I don't think we're fooling around with staff decisions. I think that perhaps someone moved ahead with something and there was a plan, and we can't be aware of every single plan that happens in the community. But as I said before, parks are important. The very first is two steps in the motion. The first one was cease and desist. Cease and desist. And I don't believe, myself, I just basically phoned as other members of council and asked staff to consider. No one member of council can phone up staff and say, stop something. So staff of their own merits, and thank you very much, decided, yes, we'll do it. Now, it is nesting season, but they could, if we decide today we don't want to do this, or we vote against this motion, they could start bringing in, say, gravel tomorrow and continue on. They wouldn't be able to cut any more trees down. We don't want that. The neighbors don't want that. So that's part one. Part one, the main thing, the neighbors don't fool around with our park. Okay, that's my understanding. Okay, the second thing, if we want to have public open houses, if we want to have another way of, I guess, discussions with the neighborhood, that's fine. You can change that whatever way you want. The third thing I wanted to ask Mr. Backen, when I say that a new plan, could a new plan not include at least bringing to council's attention other options that we in the community do with our operations center throughout the community? Because it's not an operations center for Murrayville, it's an operations center for the township of Langley. So that's my question through the chair. A new plan, would that not involve the entire Langley, if I may, through the chair?
Mr. Backen.
Your Worship, I think the new plan would be specific to the parking needs at the center. I say that because the discussion of satellite yards contemplates, I guess, land acquisition even before any construction. So, and we know industrial lands are very expensive. So I think what this would help us do is to focus on other areas, perhaps to the north or the east, of course not including any agricultural land, to try to find some areas that might be suitable for the short term. And as Mr. Zwag mentioned, in the longer term, we'd have to address the satellite works yard needs as a more permanent solution.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Richter?
Yeah, I have two different amendments here to the motion, but I think, Mr. Mayor, your suggestion of referring the motion to staff to look at other options and to develop a habitat restoration plan, which will be presented via a public open house, would cover it. I'll make that referral.
Okay, so referral with that direction. Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Kuntz seconds it. So on the referral, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Oh, your hand is up. Sorry, okay, also on the referral, Councillor Ferguson.
On referral, absolutely. Councillor Richter is 100% correct on the second part of the motion. I was just wondering if we could get the first part of it done. There isn't really a formal cease and desist in place yet. Yeah. So could we ask for division?
Well, the referral to refer, okay, yeah, I think we could. I'm just going to check with Mr. Backen. Mr. Backen, the referral motion basically stops anything, I would think. So I think it's already included in the referral because staff
I just want to make sure.
Yeah, we'll clarify with Mr. Backen because I believe staff won't proceed based on the referral motions are actually included.
That's correct, Your Worship. But the nature of the discussion, the referral would, I think, anticipate that there'd be no further action, at least as to construction of the parking lot, perhaps some restoration, but we'd be looking at bringing back some sort of report or presentation as to the other options that are, and that would somehow include the dealing with the habitat restoration and the public consultation.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Woodward?
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to also ask if I can maybe just through direction, Mr. Mayor, that this is referred, potentially we could also get, it doesn't have to be a lot, but some information of whether or not there would be some options on reconfiguration of the Murrayville site itself that might take some funding to solve the problem on the site itself. I threw out one idea, but if that's not acceptable to management, some others, just to look at that maybe, and that if that requires some funding, and rather than getting into putting them on the street or putting them on another piece of private property, I'd like to exhaust the opportunities to maybe to do it on the Murrayville site itself and have that as part of the referral, just at least maybe by direction, Mr. Mayor, if that's sort of included.
Definitely, I think
the
it
idea.
is.
Yeah, and that if there's some funding required to make some configuration changes, similar to obviously funding to build a temporary parking lot. And it would be my hope that a plan to look at a restoration would be acceptable to everybody. Obviously, you know, I look at it as an opportunity to learn on the process that, you know, if I had, I mean, my house backs onto a township park, and I certainly wouldn't like it if one day everything started getting chopped down. So I sort of feel for that, but I also want to learn from it. I think Councillor Whitmarsh put it best, to learn how to communicate better, to take it under consideration, to take that, maybe even what might seem like a small change in the grand scheme of the Township of Langley isn't necessarily a small change to everybody else. And so I think that that's really important to learn from that. I look forward to doing that, and I would certainly be happy to look at funding a series of upgrades to Old Yale Park, starting with restoration of that area. Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Richter, your hand, is that still up, or did you wish to speak? Okay, okay.
For you.
Okay, go ahead, yeah.
Okay. So my follow-up question is, I have a separate motion after this referral motion, and I'm not sure if I can put it on the table right at this point, or if you would prefer if I put it as a notice of motion for the next meeting.
Yeah, I mean, if it relates to this, it could go to this
definitely
discussion.
relates to
It could go
this.
now. But if you want to do a notice of motion to give some time, that might, like I say, there's
No, I think it's.
the barn with the cows is burning down
Okay.
right now. So
How about
Davis,
if I put it on after we've dealt with this motion, and we'll see if
Okay,
the
yep.
table's willing to
Sounds
deal with
good.
it.
Thank you. Councillor Davis?
Just quickly, I got a little confused. This referral motion that we're talking about, it's going to go to staff so they can come back with things about how we can solve the temporary problem, and just such as shuttling and maybe parking in the swimming pool or things like that, or simple things that will reduce or on-site, because is that what it's going to be for?
Yeah, staff will look at other options, so if, multiple options, and bring it back, so.
Yeah,
To
okay.
council, and then from there, if there's any public consultation that's needed to be done, then council can give direction to staff at that point.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, all right, I'm gonna call the question.
Please?
So the referral motion, Ms. Bauer?
The referral motion is that the motion is referred to staff to bring forward a report with other options for parking, as well as habitat restoration plan and public consultation.
Thank you. Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It carries unanimously. All right, move back to our agenda.
And Mr. Mayor,
Oh, yeah,
I
sorry,
wanted to-
go ahead. I'm
So the
jumping ahead.
motion that I want to put forward, with your and council's permission, is that council ask staff to develop a parks work policy that clearly states going forward, no work will be commenced in township parks until a public open house on the proposed works is conducted and public feedback received by council.
Okay, before we, that could get tricky if it's all works, because it might be something very minor that staff need to do.
Well,
So
I
wonder if
mean,
you want to
things like
ask-
cutting down trees
Yeah.
and putting new staircases and trails in.
No, no, I
they're
agree.
not
But
minor. Yeah.
I'm just saying the motion says all works. It could be a simple thing as a repairing a trail. So just to be careful what we're directing staff. If you wanted to develop that motion a little more thoroughly and bring it back next meeting, I think that'd be
Okay,
fine.
well,
And
I
then-
will
and
put
those
it
motion-
on as a notice of
Sure.
motion at the end of this meeting.
Yeah,
then.
no, that'd be
Thank you.
great, and then we can just give staff that further direction, because I hear what you're saying, it's important that some of the major projects that have been mentioned do have that notice, but we don't want to hamstring staff that they can't do anything. All right, so now we move on to the rest of our agenda. Okay, yeah, we're not in other business yet, but go ahead, Councillor Anderson.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
No, I just want to follow up on Councillor Richter's motion. Actually, just to let council know, I have a similar motion. It's not worded in the same way, and I was going to move it at the end of today's meeting as well. So maybe what will happen is staff can review them both, and then we can sort it out after the fact. There might be some merit in putting them together. Mine's just more focused on a standardization of what's allowed in parks.
Okay, and that could be, yeah, like I
Yeah.
say. It looks like a bigger project than we can determine at this table tonight, but certainly getting the work started is good. Okay, move to reports to council, and we go to E1. E1 is strata conversion application number 39. It's Dollywall, and if I could have a motion.
I'll move it.
Please, thank you. Council Long moves it, Council Davis seconds it. And any discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor? And opposed? Oh, okay, there's a hand coming up. Sorry, I didn't. Whoa. Councilor Richter, I'll rescind my calling the question. I didn't realize you had your hand up. Go ahead, Councilor Richter.
With regards to the second part of the motion, which is registration of a restrictive covenant allowing only one single-family dwelling on each strata lot, I would like clarification as to whether or not secondary suites will be allowed on each single-family dwelling.
Mr. Richardson?
Through your worship, Councilor Richter, the purpose of the second condition there noted is just one single-family dwelling on each strata lot. The R2 zone does not permit secondary dwellings.
No, not secondary dwellings, secondary suites. So for example, if one of these lots decided to put a garage in with a playroom at the top that gets converted into a secondary suite, is that permissible?
If you could just clarify, Mr. Richardson, secondary suites are permissible under the zone or not?
The zone allows for one single-family dwelling, and the zoning bylaw indicates one single-family dwelling permits a second set of cooking facilities.
Okay, thank you.
So there could be two families living on each of the lots for a total of 4 families. Okay. I'm not in support of this, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, I'll call the question on E1. All those in favor? And opposed? Councillor Arneson, Councillor Richter opposed, and it carries. Thank you. Move on to E2. This development permit application number 101101, AAA Self-Storage Depot Incorporated. Could I have a motion, please? Councillor Kunst and a seconder. Councillor Davis. Councillor Richter.
I have a question about whether this is the best use for that land. Is that land zoned industrial right now? And if we're going to put a 5-story storage building on it, is that making good use of what is very expensive and scarce industrial land in the township?
I don't know who to go to, Mr. Richardson. And this is a development permit, not a rezoning, so just if you could explain how it fits under the current zoning.
Through your worship to Councilor Richter, correct, the property is currently zoned M2, and as noted, it's a development permit with respect to the form, setting, and character of the subject building.
Okay, so,
There's a number of, your worship, there's a number of uses permitted in the M2 zone, the self-storage being one of them.
okay, thank you.
Okay. Well, I still come back to the question, is 5 stories of storage the best use for this land? And I know it's form, siting, and character, and as far as I'm concerned, 5 stories does not fit in. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I will call the question on E2. All those in favor? Oh, is it? Oh, sorry. Maybe it's my glasses, I don't know. Now they all rolled up. Okay, so okay, the third time I call the question, I'm not stopping. So here we go. Councilor Arneson, then Ferguson. Go ahead.
Oh, there we are. We'll get it right yet. Yeah, I just wanted to echo those comments. For me, even though it's an allowable use, I look at this and I know the proponent is saying that this is very innovative in terms of the aesthetic of the building, and it doesn't look like your standard or historic storage building, but it is on an industrial site. And so what I think we need to do is to review what's allowable in our industrial areas. It certainly seems to be a mismatch between having a very large storage facility in industrial land when in fact we all know there's a crisis and shortage of industrial land. So I'm not saying, that we can't support this, but I really do question why we would want to. It just seems like a really not the highest and best use of a property like that. So I won't be able to support it either.
Thank you. Councilor Ferguson?
As I may through chairs to the staff, a clarification on the use, that would be the first one, to clarify that it is indeed an acceptable use in that site. The second thing, there was a time that it was expensive to build this type of a building. I guess they're using, if I may through the chair, my second question would be concrete or something like that to build the building and also to accommodate the use on the site. Those are two questions, if I may through a chair.
Mr. Richardson or Mr. Backen? Mr. Richardson?
Starting with the second question first, there's not been a building permit submitted, but discussions with the staff indicate concurrent with your comments for Councilor Ferguson that likely be a concrete construction. The first question?
It's just to confirm the zoning. Confirming the zoning, that this is, I think you already did to Councilor Richter, but if you could just reconfirm for Councilor
Yeah, through your
Ferguson.
worship to Councilor Ferguson, correct. The MT zoning does allow a range of uses, including the subject self-storage use.
And a supplemental question, say 5 or even 7 years ago, it would be a little bit more difficult to build this type of a building looking at the way structural things were done, if I may through a chair. Is that change, if I may, through the chair, or I'm not? Maybe you'll be able to answer that. I'm not sure if you would, if I may.
Yeah, well, all I can say is I think technology has improved in all industries, including buildings, so there probably are some better techniques and technologies in buildings such as this that have improved. Other than that, I think until we actually see the building permit,
I think I think you're absolutely right, Mr. Mayor. It's something that they're actually putting an awful lot of, resources into something like this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Long.
I think it's a brilliant use of the land because the way storage units are traditionally built, they're all sprawled out with little tiny garages. They're all single story. This has got 8 elevators in it, and it's encouraging densification of the activities on a much smaller footprint. It's very forward thinking, and I think it looks a lot better than your average used store place, which is normally, like I say, all sprawled out. So kudos on them. We're not discussing uses, but I don't know where else you would build these facilities either. So if you can't do it on industrial land, where would you do it? You can't do it on commercial land. But anyhow, I think it's good looking for considering, and it's not sprawling, which I think is a benefit compared to most storage units these days.
All right, thank you. So now, looking at the screen, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? And opposed? Councilor Arneson's opposed. Councilor Richter opposed. It carries. All right, E3 is a draft 2022-2026 financial plan. And this is one where it's a 3% increase in, I'll just read it out so that the public knows. 3% increase in the 2022 Universal Services Property Tax, and a 2022 water utility increase of 1.99%, and a 2022 sanitary sewer utility increase of 3.29%. And as the chair of the zero waste, no, it's got nothing to do with it. There's no user increase for solid waste. So. You're the one that no. So it's moved by Councilor Ferguson and a seconder by Councilor Woodward and Councilor Arneson.
Thank you, Worship.
Oh, yeah, there it is.
A bit late to the starting line, but I wondered if these could be divided.
Certainly.
please? Thank you.
We'll do a quick motion. We're going to move to divide, and second by Councillor Davis. All those in favor, opposed, carried. So we'll do each one separately. No problem at all. I'll start with the first one is the 3% universal services property tax increase of 3%. I'll call the question. All those in favor and opposed. Councillor Arneson's opposed. It carries. And the second one, the water utility increase of 1.99%. I'll call the question. All those in favor and opposed. Carries unanimously. And the 2022 sanitary sewer utility user pay increase of 3.29%. I'll call the question. All those in favor and opposed. Carries unanimously. All right. Don't need a motion for the 0% increase on solid waste. So we'll leave that one. Yeah, we like those. Yeah, we can. And it's funded by tipping fees at Metro Vancouver. And so it's good to see that it's staying low. Bylaws for first and second reading. F1 is official community plan amendment and rezoning application number 10209 is Con West. And there's several addresses there. And this is amendment and bylaw number 5706, 5707, and 5708. It's moved by Councillor Long. Is there a seconder? Councillor Kunst. Okay, discussion. Councillor Woodward.
I just need to clarify the version that was moved. If Mr. Backen could clarify that for me.
That's right. There's been
a supplemental change
supplementary.
on
So,
the
sure.
weekend.
Thanks for bringing that up. Mr. Backen?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. It was to include trail amenities as opposed to any specific trail location. We feel that gives us the broadest options within the spirit and the intent of the CAC, but also means it's not limited to any specific area. Ultimately, that would be council's decision in terms of the specific area it's applied to.
So could I confirm that that was the
Yeah,
version
so I'm
that was
just,
moved?
yeah. So the motion that was moved, that's right, the most recent one. Okay, so
Okay,
Councillor
great.
Long's
Thank
intention
you.
was the most recent one. Thank you. We're clear on that. Councillor Whitmarsh?
Yeah, thank you. I certainly am very supportive of this project. We certainly need an increase in industrial land. I think that's very clear. I'm very appreciative of their contribution back to the community in terms of the piece of land and the environmental rehabilitation of that land, and as well the financial contribution. So I am very supportive of it. But with regards to the financial contribution, I did have amendment I'd like to bring, but I'm happy to wait until after others have spoken.
All right, thank you. I'll come back to you. Councillor Davis?
Thank you very much. This has been it's been a controversial ride in the past. ALR lands, 36 acres is a fair chunk of land. They've had problems trying to amalgamate them all, but they've got them together now. ConWest has come out with talk to staff with a voluntary amendment contribution. The Agriculture Land Commission has already taken this out of the ALR, providing certain conditions have been met with fences, buffers, drainage, and the covenants, and I think that that's going to be met. All the partners of Kwantlen University, Salmon River Enhancement, and Kwantlen First Nations are in support of the amendment contributions. So I'm going to support, and I want to be clear that I'm just supporting moving this along to get it to public hearing. This is going to go to public hearing. So I'm not trying to be cheeky or, say, well, now you'll have to wait. But so I support this to go to public hearing so we can see what the public has to say and get them on board. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Ferguson?
I think that Councillor Davis took the words right out of my mouth. I mean, they had an awful lot of challenges. They put everybody together, and I guess we're moving forward to public hearing. I have no problem with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Arneson?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I just want to expand upon why I'm supporting this. I think that this is an extraordinary opportunity for the Township of Langley based on a commercial application for rezoning that fundamentally has already taken place. So the commercialization of this land, I wanted to thank staff for working with the proponent in particular to come up with this amenity, which I think obviously based on the correspondence we received is very well positioned and very well supported, especially by environmental and stewardship groups as well as Indigenous groups and others in the community. I would note myself that this would be very, very difficult for the township to achieve in any other way, because this is not something that's related directly to, something that's happening in a nearby area where next door, they're saying, okay, well, we'll give you like a large amount of money for something that we're doing on this site. I suppose the word that I would use, but not in a negative way, is we're leveraging in the Township of Langley, which I think is very clever and very progressive. So we're leveraging this use of one property that's tied to another property where we can gain huge benefit. And it meets so many of our social policies, our environmental policies, our policies having to do with education and agriculture. So I couldn't really say anything negative about it at this point. And I also like the flexibility of having the funds that are available for the 1.9 so that council has an opportunity to consider based on our priorities and interests what we'd like to spend that money on. So I just want to say that I'm very much in support of this. I too want to hear what the community has to say, and I look forward to hearing more at the public hearing and through our engagement process. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Councillor Whitmarsh, you had indicated you wanted to put an amendment on.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I really value the comments that other councillors have made. I guess the slight amendment that I'd like to make does refer to the item around the $1.9 million contribution. That is on page 2, item 11, if you're looking for it. And it says there that the contribution is towards trail enhancements and amenities in the township. I'd like to just further expand that a bit and include the possibility of recreation facilities in that, and allow council a little bit more flexibility in determining what those funds could be used for. So I think it would say then for me towards recreation facilities, trail enhancements and amenities in the township. So it fits the,
So adding the words recreation facilities before trail enhancements, towards recreation facilities, trail enhancements. That would be your amendment?
That would be my amendment, correct. Thank you.
Okay, moved by Councillor Whitmarsh, second by Councillor Kunst, the amendment to add the words recreation facilities. Councillor Long, did you wish to speak to the, I think you've already spoken.
Yeah, no, I do. We're getting a little confused here, aren't we? Because now this replacement pages mentions overpass and all that again. But I mean, Your Worship, what I'm trying to get at here, I think, is that, the motion was made to not specify the overpass. Maybe the overpass is a good idea, maybe not, but it gives flexibility. That's what staff have said. But surely we have a policy with these amenity contributions that would cover all kinds of projects. So if we start to be specific here again, and maybe that's appropriate, but would it not be simpler to say that it goes into the amenity contribution fund or pot, where just like DCCs and everything else, there are projects that are spelled out and council picks those priorities and away we go. Maybe a comment from staff, because this could come up every time there's an amenity. It's all very well for a developer, I think, to specify what they would like the amenity to go to, and maybe they've done some research in the area, like playground equipment or something else. But at the end of the day, it goes into an amenity contribution fund that council and staff would administer. Is that not correct?
Mr. Backen.
Your Worship, it's a little complicated because our CAC funding program is in its infancy. As you may recall, CACs are still considered to be voluntary. They have to be, I guess, worked out between the parties. And as such, legal counsel would like to see it as specific as possible so there can be no suggestion that the timeline or the terms weren't met. Staff, however, as you pointed out, would like to see it broader. And what you've seen in the language is a bit of a compromise where it kind of fits the category but not the specific project itself. So we have some latitude but not as broad as simply going to the CAC fund. in the medium term, perhaps the long term, we would seek to have a CAC fund that's a bit more robust in identifying all possible projects, and the monies could all go towards those. The challenge we have is it's still very much in its infancy. As you may recall, the CAC fund had a very limited number of projects, or limited number of, I guess, concepts going forward, and some of these may or may not have fit within those concepts. So this has led us to where we are at today.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you, Your Worship. So the amendment, can we hear it again? It's just to add a word that...
Just to add word recreation facilities, so it'd be included as as contemplated. Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Ferguson, yeah.
Yes, I think that Mr. Backen answered some of my question. He started off saying how complicated. Perhaps I'll wait for Councillor Whitmarsh to maybe explain it a bit better. I have to apologize. I'm busy reading the replacement page, which we got today. So that's all. Just a quick brief from Councillor Whitmarsh would be helpful. Thank you very much.
Point of order, Your Worship.
Yeah.
The replacement pages on our desks are wrong. Or what's going on here? Because the one I have right in front of me here, which just showed up on my desk, shows towards the completion of the pedestrian overpass. But that's not what I moved. I moved what we were sent in the email.
Mr. Backen can clarify.
Your Worship, I think the replacement pages were actually issued on Friday, so I think we were in receipt of those. There was paper copies provided today, and so in any event, the copies that you're dealing with are the more broader category, not the specific.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. All right, Councillor Whitmarsh.
Thank you. I guess just a couple of comments. You know, this contribution for this project isn't really following the normal CAC contribution process. It's a bit different because we know, as we all know, this is a situation of ALR land being turned into industrial land, and it's a bit of a different process. We do not have a CAC policy around industrial land. So this is following the normal due process could work, and it certainly could guide us, but it's not bound by that. So what I wanted to do was to make just that a little bit more more open in terms of opportunities for staff and council to look at ways to invest the money following similar ideas of CACs, because CACs do allow recreation facilities, but to not limit it only to trails. Now, we might decide as a council, we may decide as staff may guide us and say that's really where they want to put all the money, but I think it just allows us to be a little bit more open with it, and that's the reason for the motion.
Thank you.
Or the amendment, sorry.
All right, thank you. So I think at this point I could call the question on the amendment. So all those in favor of the amendment and opposed? Carries unanimously. So now the motion as amended. Councillor Woodward.
Yeah, I want to, I mean, I've had a good 3 weeks here to reflect on the last council meeting and specific to this application. I think there was, and I watched it again, there was some good debate for sure, and sort of think that at this point, take an additional couple of weeks here from the public. So I don't see any need to bring forward any additional ideas tonight, this afternoon. I look forward to hearing from the public on it, getting some additional submissions separate from the submissions that we've received, which I think I'll be spending a bit more time looking into as well. And then, of course, the contribution and some of these land restoration works and so on. First I saw those was on Thursday. Sounds like some others have had some advance notice of some of that. So I'll need to take some more time with some of those ideas. And I'll be supporting it going to public hearing, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so at this point I'll call the question on the motion as amended. All those in favor and opposed? Councillor Richter opposed, it carries. Thank you. All right, move to bylaws for first, second, and third reading. And G1 is Drinking Water Conservation Bylaw Amendments, Bylaw 5771 and Bylaw 5772. And this is to keep us in line with what Metro Vancouver's rules are under watering. So I'd ask for a motion, please. Councillor Davis and seconder. Second. Councillor Woodward. Councillor Arneson.
Thank you, Worship. Through your Worship to staff, I understand that this is meant to align us with the Metro water conservation updates. I did have a question because I've been reading that some communities have extensively expanded their fines. And I noticed the staff report does refer to the upping of the fines, but it seems rather modest. And I'm just wondering, through your worship to staff, is there any upward amount that we could apply to this? Because really, in the most extreme case, it's only another $100 if they get fined for doing something that's really quite egregious when there's a water conservation plan in play.
Mr. Backen?
Your Worship, it's an interesting question. The regime put forth by Metro Vancouver is we're obligated to follow. Could we be more aggressive than that? That's something we'd have to take away and consider if that was the direction of council, because it has some complexities to it in terms of our jurisdiction vis-a-vis the Metro Vancouver jurisdiction.
So just as a follow-up then, could it be the case that we approve this today, subject to some follow-up review from staff to see what our position would be?
That's correct. This could proceed, and then if there was council's desire, we could do a subsequent amendment to it that would be, if you will, a standalone addition.
Thank you.
Councilor Woodward?
Yeah, I'm going to follow up on that a little bit, Mr. Mayor, if I may, a question through Mr. Bracken again. How does the Metro Vancouver regime apply to us? So if we were to purchase 1% water, that regime applies to us, but if we're pulling it out of the ground, why wouldn't we have some more flexibility on that?
It's an interesting issue, Your Worship, because we've often wondered if it's a kind of a pro rata. Does that mean that 50-50, whatever the ratio is? We don't think so at this time. We think that once you take a drop from the system, then you're obliged to be consistent with the system. If we were to go completely with groundwater, then we certainly wouldn't be subject to it. We wouldn't be part of the water function. So it's really our membership in the function we think that actually drives it as opposed to the actual consumption.
Okay, so it would be an interesting legal issue then, that if we're deciding to be in the water treatment business and we're pulling a bunch of water out of the ground, we're again subject to Metro Vancouver rules, even though it's our water. Maybe another downside to pulling water out of the ground and treating it?
That's correct. The way that the actual technical way around it would be to actually make a hard division that would say the west is supplied by Metro and the east supplied by groundwater, or something where we create our own utility within the overall scope, if that was our intent.
And another one, it's interesting. Some sections of our water system are 100% groundwater. They're not connected to the Metro system. Are they subject to these restrictions? There's a few pockets of people that are 100% groundwater, I believe, right?
Is right?
Yeah.
That is correct.
And they would also be subject to these, even though it's 100% township water. I'm just interested in it, actually.
So maybe just follow up on that too, because it relates to those who are on their own system. Like in the rural area, there's a lot of independent wells. And this is a bylaw for the Township of Langley. We also want to protect our groundwater. Does that apply to wells or,
Your Worship, there's two types, I suppose. There's the private wells, which are not subject to our jurisdiction. If there are private systems that we've taken over, they are subject to our jurisdiction. Therefore, our membership with Metro Vancouver would suggest that they are part of that. If we were to create our own standalone utility, and I'm not certain of the legalities of that, we may be able to opt those facilities out of the Metro Vancouver structure. But that's something we have to be very cautious on, because it's something we haven't really focused on before.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So as we spend millions on water treatment, we don't have complete control of our water. Is that correct? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Long?
Yeah, but following these water direction, let's say, in using water more wisely, it's better all around, whether we're pulling the water from the ground, whether it's coming from Metro. I mean, these are sort of not generic, but they are in a way generic rules that the whole world needs to follow. In the summer, when there's less water available, you use less water, and water conservation should be number one anyway. Canada's really bad in the consumption per capita on water. It's like it's almost horrible when you think about some of the other parts of the world that get away with such little water. But we also have the best of all worlds here, because, and I hate to say this because I know you're on Metro there, Your Worship, but I mean, if there was an issue with Metro water, and that has been in the past where something went wrong, Aldergo, for example, was able to shut off the supply of Metro water and use only our groundwater. And I think at that particular time, we may have been the only area that wasn't on a boil advisory, because we were able to segregate perhaps which water was going to be put through the pipes. But anyway, I think it's still all real good that we try and have a regional approach to water use. Whether it's a technical one or a legal one, that's another question, I suppose, but having one that's consistent with the region so that everybody understands all the same rules, I think is very handy.
Yep, thank you. I know there are municipalities within the Metro Vancouver who aren't part of the water district, and White Rock comes to mind, and I'm sure they have their own, I don't know if they're following this or at all, but they also have their own restrictions. Councillor Richter?
Just wanted to get clarification as one of the members of this community that is on a private well. I don't believe this bylaw applies to my private well.
That's correct, Mr.
That's
Beckett.
correct. Okay, thank you.
Thanks. All right, I'll call the question on G1. All those in favor and opposed? Carries unanimously. And we move to G2. Just wait for, there we go. All right, G2 is Langley 2022-2026 5-year financial plan bylaw and development cost charge reserve fund expenditure bylaw. Bylaw 5773 and 5774. This is bylaw for first, second, and third reading. If I could have a motion, please. Councillor Davis, Councillor Woodward seconds. Discussion, call the question. All those in favor and opposed? Carries unanimously. Move on to bylaws for consideration at third reading. H1 is rezoning application number 100650 and development permit application number 101202, BMG Projects Incorporated, bylaw 5769. Could I have a motion, please? Councillor Ferguson moves, seconder. Councillor Davis. Councillor Richter.
Okay, I just wanted to, we had some letters that came in with regards to this and to the need to protect fish habitat. So can I move a referral to staff to deal with the fish habitat and other issues raised in the letters?
I'll just ask Mr. Is it Mr. Richardson? Or?
Thank you, Your Worship. As noted in the subject report, and as Councillor Richter outlined, there are watercourses present on the property. There's restricted covenants already in place, and the subject application is following our streamside protection bylaw by invoking the flex provision. So the watercourse item has been addressed as part of the application in concert with the relevant bylaw.
Thank you.
Okay, but I was referring specifically to, I think we got a letter in from the Yorkson Watershed Enhancement Society expressing some concerns.
Yes.
So I would like to refer this back to staff to review in conjunction with the concerns raised in the letters sent.
Okay, if you wish to make that referral motion.
Yes, I do.
Yes, is there a seconder by Councillor Davis? So on the referral, and Councillor Richter, do you wish to speak to the referral?
No, I
Okay.
just think that it was a very cogent letter that was sent, raised some good issues, and I'd like that those issues will be properly dealt with before this project moves forward. So.
Thank you. Councillor Whitmarsh.
Yes, thank you. I'm wondering, maybe a question through your worship to staff. Maybe these things have already been addressed, and maybe staff could just let us know how they're being addressed, and we wouldn't have to then do a referral.
Sure. Mr. Swag or Mr. Richardson, if you could maybe give us some sort of, I know you gave us some broad information, but maybe if you could relate it to that letter and see if those issues have been addressed. Yeah. Yeah, it's in distribution. I think, Councillor Richter, if you could just. March 24th, distribution, page 6. Let staff catch up to that. Yeah, okay, March 24th. You might be the wrong. Yeah, page 6. Page 6. And then page 7 is where the letter begins. So we'll let staff just kind of catch up on that. And letter on page 10.
Thank you, Worship, for the ability to catch up there, seeing the letter and refreshing myself. The items requested by the Yorkson Creek Yorkson Enhancement Society request the type of habitat indicated in the images that will be sort of provided along with the subject application. So the application of the standard that's shown in the letter is the one that our streamside protection bylaw calls for in terms of those results. There's some additional requests off-site alluded to in the letter, but with respect to the subject site and as it pertains to the subject application, the bylaw, the works will occur in compliance with the bylaw and are consistent with what's shown in their figures attached to their correspondence.
Okay, thank you. All right, Councillor Whitmarsh, that was your question, correct? You're good. Okay, Councillor Long. On the amendment.
So that confirms what's been said. I mean, it's all very well. I know this letter shows concerns. I do see it now. But what staff is saying, it is compliant with our regulations. So how can you really? What else can you do? You can just tell them that it complies. If you want to change the regulations, that's a whole other story. So.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Richter.
Yeah, well, we've had letters before from the Yorkson watershed group, particularly with respect to culverts that are being installed that are not fish friendly, and they need to be fish friendly, absolutely. So I would just like to make sure that this list of items that are on page 3 have been incorporated before we give it third reading.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Davis.
Yeah, I think I don't know if they're going to be able to redesign the 80th Avenue Yorkson Crossing, but that is one that needs to be done. But I think that we need to look at each one of these items on that list and get an answer of how we can support them on this development application. Over.
Thank you. Okay, just before I call the question, yeah, I hear the concerns, but I think they've been addressed, so I'm not going to support the amendment. I think they're addressed, and there are some things that are out of the scope of this development. So I will call the question on the amendment. All those in favor? Oh, the referral, correct, sorry. On the referral, all those in favor and opposed. So I've got Mayor Froese, Councillor Kunst, Councillor Long, Councillor Whitmarsh opposed, so the referral carries. And so now we move on to bylaws for final adoption. I-1 is rezoning application number 100551. So I'll start with the bylaw 5600. Could I have a motion, please, on the bylaw? On I-1. Councillor Whitmarsh moves it, and seconder Councillor Ferguson. I'll call the question. All those in favor? And opposed? That carries. Opposed. Oh, Councillor Arneson opposed. That carries. Thank you. On the development permit, application number 101044. A motion, please. Councillor Davis moves, second by Councillor Ferguson. Call the question. All those in favor and opposed? Councillor Arneson opposed. It carries. Move on to I-2. Land use contract discharge and rezoning application number 100651. Bylaw 5684 and bylaw 5685. Could I have a motion, please? Councillor Long moves it. Seconder. I have a second. Councillor Whitmarsh seconds. Call the question. All those in favor and opposed? Councillor Arneson opposed. It carries. And correspondence. 2 items of correspondence. A motion to receive the correspondence. Councillor Davis, second by Councillor Ferguson. All those in favor? Opposed? Carries. Minutes of committees. We have Heritage Advisory Committee of March 2, Tree Protection Advisory Committee of March 8, Recreation, Culture and Parks Advisory Committee of March 9, Seniors Advisory Committee of March 16. Looks like everybody was busy. Motion to receive those minutes. Councillor Davis, second by Councillor Kunst. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carries unanimously. K2 is the Tree Protection Advisory Committee recommended motion that terms of reference be be updated. Councillor Arneson moves it. Seconder? A second?
Whitmarsh.
Councillor Whitmarsh. Call the question. Oh, Councillor Ferguson wishes to speak to it.
The committee thought of council sending it in that direction, and if there's an update from the chair or co-chair, it'd be appreciated. For me?
I can maybe just make a comment.
Sure, let's make a comment, Councillor Whitmarsh.
Appreciate that.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think that this item came forward to the TPAC group. It was certainly discussed by the group and generally quite well received, that members would like to contribute to this and contribute and add that element to their work, their work. And it was discussed around working with staff about making it less onerous for them so that it could be done a little bit quicker, so that it wasn't an onerous task. And I think everyone that was there supported it. And so I think there's not much else to say other than they're really happy to be doing this work for us.
And Mr. Mayor, just to comment, I really appreciate the work by the chair and co-chair of putting this forward. I think it's an important issue, and I'm very happy about this going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so I'll call the question on K2. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries unanimously. There's on K3 is Recreation, Culture and Parks Advisory Committee recommended motion. This is a motion to council. I would say if just a couple comments, maybe Mr. Back can help, that this, the motion is that council refer the community donations policy update to staff to include a maintenance clause that ensures the maintenance is considered at no additional cost to taxpayer. There may be some issues with this, so if council did want to look into it further, either we just receive this and then take no further action, or refer to staff to come back with more information, because there could be some unintended consequences, such as if someone wants to donate or a large item, there wouldn't be possible to maintain it, such as land and that sort of thing. If it's a small item, it's so insignificant that the township would maintain it. So, Mr. Backen, can you maybe just provide us some background? I know we had a little short discussion on this.
That's correct, Your Worship. I guess it would be wise, I think, to refer this back to staff so we could do a bit of an analysis in terms of the costs and benefits. And why that's the case is we may see that the maintenance cost of a bench might be $5 per year, but the administration of that fund could exceed the $5 per year. Likewise, there may be a request to donate a significant large piece of property that would be in our interest to acquire, but because of the criteria of the policy, if it's not carefully worded, may mean that the party would have to give the land and a sum of cash to maintain that, which I don't think was our intent. I think the objective is certainly obtainable. It just needs to be fairly well thought out and to ensure that we're not having any unintended consequences.
Thank you. So, I see there's a list here. We don't have a motion yet, but I'll go through the list. One thing, if there is a referral motion, then it'd be appropriate to refer K3 and then also N1 at the same time. Is that correct, Mr. Backen? So then, if council wishes to do that, then put them both forward and they can come back. Councilor Richter.
I'll move referral of K3 and N1.
Okay, I'm just going to go through the quick, there may be some questions.
Well,
and then I'll come back to you.
and
Okay.
I want to just make the point, I don't think we should be just receiving this. This is an item that council asked and referred to the committee to provide input on. They have done their job and they're recommending back to us. And I think we owe it to them to ask staff to consider their recommendation.
Yep, thank you. Councilor Long. So there's no motion on the floor right now. This is questions of staff regarding this.
Your Worship, isn't that what this is? This is what I'm reading that it is, that it's going to be referred to staff to, because that's what the committee's asked, that council refer it to staff to include a maintenance clause, and you've expanded upon that, saying, well, yeah, so that there'll be some other information coming forward with that, and some criteria perhaps to make sure it's suitable, and then that's the same thing with N1. So I'm supportive of that. I just had a quick question that, we are going to be planting some trees, and there was under items released from camera, there was a name of some individuals that are going to have trees planted on Arbor Day. And the question was given to me by a citizen, can any citizen pay to have a tree put in under the current policy? Because that is just around the corner, Arbor Day. And if so, what would be the process?
Yeah. No,
I can't see it being off topic,
okay.
But anyway, it's up to you, Your Worship.
Well, sorry, there is a policy where people can donate towards trees, which is what we're discussing here. We're just doing a bit of a discussion. So, yeah, that is possible.
Okay, so they should just
There's
get a hold of
donation.
staff.
That's
I'll
right.
talk to staff later. Well, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Council Woodward?
Yeah, I might wait for the referral, but to just talk about that, but I'll give it some context. I think the discussion at the committee table mostly centered around things like benches. So it was not considering items such as land or maintenance of land. So I think that the intent there would be to talk, there was a few members concerned that some bench would be donated for a memoriam item, and then that at the 10 years that it just disappears, not replaced, not maintained. So there, while the motion may be specific to maintenance, there was some concern that these items given to the township to honor a loved one then just disappeared after that 10-year period. So I don't think there's any sort of consideration of land or any sort of unintended items like that. So I'm happy to move it with the refer it as Councillor Richter suggested, with the understanding that that was the limit of the scope of the motion.
Yeah, oh, that's fair, because it just gets that clarity back.
It wasn't donated, and it was very specific
Okay.
to that kind of an item.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, I know with the bench donation, the donation is only good for 10 years anyway. At that point, then you have to redonate. So there is a bit of a built-in. Yeah. 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 Oh, I see. Okay. Councillor Whitmarsh, and we don't have a motion yet. We just quick questions, and then we'll.
Yeah. Thank you, Your Worship. I'm, the motion is a good motion, except probably just a slight wording adjustment for me around semantics. This is directing that change to be put in the policy. I guess it'd be helpful to have it come from staff on information on what that would look like if we were to consider that. So it's a semantics point, but I agree with generally comments from the rest of the council.
Great, thank you. So a motion to refer K3 and N1. Councillor Woodward? Okay, moved. Councillor Richter seconded. Okay, go ahead, Councillor Woodward.
I just wanted to speak to Councillor Whitmarsh's point there. I wanted to highlight there was some discussion around that. This is why it's worded that ensured maintenance is considered, not to be dictated or confirmed. So that's how I was reading it anyway. Ensures that maintenance is considered, not directed, not mandated, but that it's at least considered prior to the adoption of the policy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think staff, Mr. Backen, you have enough direction from all that? Okay, great. I'll call the question on the referral for K3 and N1. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. All right. Oh, we're on to the mayor's report. Oh, drum roll. Why does everybody leave? Why does everybody leave before? I should do the mayor's report first. I keep telling myself that. But for those that are here and on Zoom land, good afternoon and welcome. And I hope everybody enjoyed their spring break. I know it was interesting to be out and about and see all the kids enjoying their time with their parents and in different activities. I know I certainly enjoyed that. And I did get away myself a little bit. So as I read through my report, you'll notice that council was busy. A couple of International Women's Day events took place on March the 8th. And first, I attended the Langley United Soccer Association's Women's Day match at Willoughby Community Park. There's 28 16 to 17-year-olds. Young women who played in the BC Soccer's provincial program and competed in a red versus black match in hopes to secure a spot on the Canada Games team roster. And of these players, 5 came from Langley United, and they'd been selected out of the highest level of youth soccer programming. Prior to the start of the game, I participated in the ceremonial coin toss with the team captains and head referee. I quite enjoyed it. I spent 15 years coaching my daughters, and to go back and see these young women. And Langley United Soccer president told me there's 4,500 youth playing soccer in the township of Langley. So I was just very impressed on how it's grown. So there it is. It's in the air. Nobody knows what it is at that point. What a picture. Second, Councillor Arneson attended the Ishtar Women's Resource Society's Women's Day celebration in Langley City. And women shared personal stories of abuse, trials, hope, and triumph with the crowd. And I'd like to thank Ishtar for hosting such an empowering event. Councillor Arneson also attended the Fraser Valley Cultural Diversity Awards. On March the 10th, organizations and businesses around the Fraser Valley came together to recognize their achievements and celebrate each other and the initiatives and practices that they've put in place to recognize and encourage diversity in the community. 2 Langley businesses won awards. The Art of Co-op won the award for Effective Human Resources Strategies, and Systems Business Coach Incorporated won the Inclusive Environment Award. Congratulations and thank you to these and all those who won awards. These are true assets to the community. And I know the awards recognize only a couple, but I know there's so many other businesses out there that are strive to do the best they can in diversity, and we really appreciate our business community. On March the 15th, Councilors Arneson and Whitmarsh attended the Greater Langley Chamber of Commerce's dinner meeting, where Minister Ravi Kahlon spoke about the province's economic plan. I had an introductory meeting with the new Korean Consul General, Mr. Song, and the Deputy Korean Consul General, Mr. Hong, on March the 16th. Congratulations to Consul General Song on his appointment. On March the 18th, Acting Mayor Ferguson participated in a meeting organized by Fraser Health regarding updates on the response to the COVID-19 pandemic and to discuss areas where we can work collectively to respond to the crisis. Councillor Arneson attended the Nowruz celebration on March 20th. The event was organized by Afghan and Iranian communities to celebrate the Persian New Year. Councillor Arneson enjoyed some speeches as well as traditional music, dance, and refreshments. And I bet you the food was good. I love that. Yeah. I think I attended this last year or a couple of years ago. Who knows, with COVID, you kind of forget. On March the 21st, Acting Mayor Ferguson attended the Langley Memorial Hospital Auxiliary AGM. For over 75 years, they've been providing excellent service to our community. That is more than 7 decades of greeting visitors, helping at the gift shop and thrift store, socializing with and supporting patients and families, and raising much needed funds for the hospital. They do such amazing work, and we're very proud to have them in our community. Councillor Arneson attended the BC Multiculturalism and Anti-Racism Awards that took place virtually on March the 21st. Premier John Horgan and Parliamentary Secretary for Anti-Racism Initiatives, Rashna Singh, honored British Columbians whose work strengthens and promotes multiculturalism and anti-racism efforts in BC communities. More than 100 people and organizations across the province were nominated for their exceptional efforts. Congratulations and thank you to the nominees and winners. You're the true heroes in the fight for systemic change. I participated in the Greater Langley Chamber of Commerce's Coffee and Conversation on March 22nd. Attendees asked some great questions from how the community can better support farmers markets to updates on the Brooks and Fernridge neighborhood plans to question about infrastructure and businesses in the township. And I want to say I was in an area where my Wi-Fi was very sketchy, and our staff were there to back me up when I went off. I don't know how many times I signed back in, but I really appreciate the support we have in our staff in economic development. And we got through it and we answered the questions, and they had a pretty good turnout for that. So the world of technology, it'd be good to get face-to-face again. But speaking face-to-face, as a trustee for the Municipal Finance Authority, I attended the AGM and Board of Trustees meeting in Victoria on March 23rd and 24th. And this was the first in-person MFA meeting since the start of the pandemic. It was great to participate and connect with everyone in person. So the annual general meeting for all the members is in spring, and then in fall at UBCM is a semi-annual meeting for all the members, of which there are 40, and Metro Vancouver appoints 10 to the membership, and then also appoints 4 as trustees. So I sit as a trustee, and it's quite a great organization. We were going to celebrate 50 years, but that was this would be 52 because of the pandemic. We couldn't do that at the right time. So it's good to get together again and meet everyone, and we had a great economic forum. Gloria Doubleday, wife of our former administrator, Derek Doubleday, passed away in February, and her celebration of life was held on March 26th. She was heavily involved in the Langley community and will be missed. I offer my heartfelt sympathies to her family, friends, and the community. And I know she was very instrumental in the Langley Music School, and we always enjoyed listening to her great voice when she was singing. On March 26th was the Hope Grows Here Gala at Cascades Casino, hosted by Mayor Val Vandenbroek and her husband Rob. The auction item Dinner with Langley Mayors raised $1,500 in support of Foundry Langley, the new youth health and wellness facility coming to Langley. I'd like to thank the hosts for a wonderful evening that raised a lot of money for such a worthy cause. And with that, that's my mayor's report. And there's several meetings that attended in the last little while: Metro Board, TransLink, and Solid Waste Management Plan and Independent Consultation Engagement Panel. That's moving along quite well. We have to update the Solid Waste Management Plan as legislated, and going through a very in-depth consultation. So there's 2 committees that have been struck to work towards updating that plan, and these committees are made up of people in the community and also industry. So I did that. I see Councillor Richter, your hand is up. And
I just wanted to update council on the Metro 2050 plan that we discussed and moved to public hearing.
Yes.
As of Friday's meeting. And I suspect that the April 2nd Council of Council meeting will focus on this Metro 2050 plan. I would like to ask that our staff be prepared to schedule a council discussion on TOL issues relative to the plan, because our council is going, as will all the other member municipalities, going to have to take an independent vote on whether or not we accept Metro 2050. And it requires, Metro 2050 requires unanimous consent by all municipalities. And I just wanted to give the heads up that it doesn't look like Surrey's gonna play ball, so.
Yeah, so.
Maybe we should look too at issues that we have and try to get them resolved before 2050 moves forward.
Yeah, thank you. So there will be a public hearing on April the 20th for members of the public who wish to present regarding Metro 2050. Each municipality, there is a process. I know the staff are working with each municipality, and municipalities that do have concerns, there's several directions and processes that can go, but it would be good, as you say, to, when the time comes for our staff to provide presentations to council.
Yeah,
we certainly will need that prior to any vote.
And
so
I still think that the issues that we had submitted, did they, Mr. Backen, through the mayor to you, Mr. Backen, did township staff ever come and talk to you about our issues?
Or township, or you mean Metro or?
Metro staff, sorry.
Metro staff, yeah.
Not to myself, and I don't believe to community development.
Yeah, there would have been, I know Metro does, they work with the municipalities on the issues, but the staff, I know Mr. Seffi isn't here, so I don't know. Yeah.
Because
Yeah, there is communication.
Metro staff did reach out to 7 member municipalities that had concerns, like we had concerns, and Metro staff did spend time with those member municipalities, but it would appear that I guess our concerns aren't important enough for their time, and I think our concerns are important enough. I was not very happy with how they treated our comments and basically just pushed them off. So I think we need to go back to our original discussion and our original comments and make a decision as to how strongly we feel about these. I myself feel extremely strongly about putting aquifer protection into Metro 2050, given what's happened with the Little Campbell River under 2040. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ferguson?
Well, I think those are good points.
We need your update on the
Just
wastewater.
On my what?
You always give us a great update on the wastewater committee.
Well, that'll be coming up, I guess,
Okay.
April the 2nd as well. I mean, obviously, we've got about 4 sewage liquid waste plants are coming forward, and they have some new information for the members of Metro Vancouver in the area. I did want to say that, well, by the way, Councillor Richter is absolutely right. That's important that we stay on course with Metro. We've been down this road before, and we've had to fight really hard to get what is Langley's and our respect for them. And I think we've come a long way, Mr. Mayor. I think that we've come a long way under the leadership of those that served as directors over the last 8 or so years. I did want to say under the health briefing by Fraser Health, I think all of the mayors were there, other than some councillors like myself, but most of them. The COVID and moving forward, they're moving cautiously, of course. Hospitals and clinics and things like that, they're still remaining the mask. And those businesses, I didn't realize, that wish to remain, that's entirely up to those businesses that wanted to keep the masks going and things like that. So those were well explained, and there'll be more to come over the months. And as we know, there's new variants always coming forward. I did have a question, though, for Councillor Richter. A question was asked for me, and I don't expect you to have an instant answer, Councillor Richter. The Campbell Valley Park, there is a trail to the old racetrack, and it's closed right now, and it's got them repairs they got to do through the walkway. Any idea? I don't expect you to have an instant answer. Can you look and when that might indeed? Because people that walk and use that park all the time were wondering when they're going to move on it. If I may.
Yeah, I think maybe you take that offline. Yeah, so I don't know.
Okay, thank you. And I don't expect an instant answer for that. Thank you.
Thanks. Who do we got next? Councillor Arneson.
Thank you, Worship. Just a couple of brief things. First of all, the Climate Action Committee for Metro that I sit on, I think one of the interesting things or most germane to the Township of Langley, the roadmap for 2050, the agricultural component has had a slight delay. We're trying to move them forward together, but because of the flooding, it was deemed it was a big challenge for those that were affected by that to be able to participate in that. So there's a few more months delay about that. And on a completely different front, the Fraser Valley Regional Library, I just want to let everybody know who might be interested. Puzzle cubes are now available to be borrowed through the library, and they also have an online How to Solve Puzzle Cubes seminar on April 6th. So if you're interested, you can check out their website. Apparently, they have 100 puzzle cube kits available free to library customers for a 2 to 3 week loan period, and it's got Rubik's connected cubes. So anybody who's ever wanted to know how to speed up their performance on a Rubik's cube, this might be a good thing. Thank you.
Great, thanks. All right, so that's other, we'll move on to other business. Thank you for all that. And one was referred, so we're to other business. So is there any other business? Councillor Davis?
Yes, I thought I'd run this by council. Wally Martin has been recycling old election signs and painting the Ukrainian flag to raise awareness and start the dialogue of the Ukraine-Russian, I don't know what the word would be, conflict, I guess. He would like to, I'd like to have a sign also to hung up at community centers here at the Township Hall. And I've got one on my farm sign, and I see there's many, Councillor Ferguson, he reported, has one. And I would like to hang a sign up, and I just wanted to see what council, if council would support that. This is not a, this is a real world problem. This is, it's not a township problem, but.
I think maybe Mr. Back can give us a little bit of policy around that. Yeah.
Thank you, Richard. Our policy is somewhat limited in that it's closest thing we have would be the flag raising and lowering of the flags. So we generally don't permit it, even though it may be an exceptionally worthy cause. It's up to council, I guess, to actually provide us with that direction. So I'm suggesting just a quick motion to undertake what Councillor Davis suggests, and then that would dispose of the matter.
Okay. So Councillor Davis, if you wish to make a motion, and I think there should be some limitations on time, that sort of thing, if you want to make a motion to raise a flag. Now, Mr. Back, where would we put the flag?
Well, he,
Not just flag, you're
no, he has,
a sign, yeah, a sign, yeah.
sorry, he's made a bunch, and actually it's unbelievable how many he's getting out there. But it's not a flag. No, it's just a painted sign, and I just thought I'd put it up in the window downstairs, and because this isn't a problem here in the township. This is a world problem, and I know we're not a world problem. We're a township, but I see Eric Councillor Woodward has a flag on his chest, and it's something that I think we need to support.
So, Mr. Back, I know we have a lot of facilities. How do we do this? I know we did the lights at the pedestrian overpass, and we did that for a week. This conflict could go on for a long time. We don't know. So,
well, maybe a couple weeks. I mean,
well,
no. But maybe just to put the flag up for a couple weeks, or something like that. You know.
Your Worship, I think the intent would be that there be a sign that it be located, I think, at the township civic facility.
Sure.
Okay. And for a duration of up to
2 weeks, 3 weeks.
You want to make that motion?
Sure. I thought I did. Yeah.
Second by Councillor Woodward. Yeah. Let's do a quick. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Awesome. All right. I'll move on to Councillor Richter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to put the following notice of motion up for the next meeting, and that is that council ask staff to develop a parks work policy that clearly states going forward that no significant development work will be commenced in township parks until a public open house on the proposed works is conducted and public feedback received by council.
Thank you. Okay. All right, I'll move on to Councillor Arneson. Other business?
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess this would be the appropriate time. I think I'm just going to press a button on a similar but differently worded kind of motion for the next council meeting. Talks about the Parks Master Plan and having an opportunity for the broader community to be engaged, and that works not be undertaken until such time as those have been considered, as well as council overview of those activities. I'm just going to press a button and send it as a motion,
Okay.
a notice of
Notice
motion.
okay.
Thank you. Oh, and Your Worship, I do have actually a couple of items, some more items distributed
Okay.
to flag. So I'm not sure, item number 6, from March 24th, about the patio applications and red tape. I'm wondering if we could hear something back from staff about the current status, because we've had, our plans have changed now, so I don't know if we need to amend what our framework has been over the COVID period.
Mr. Backen, would that be a memo? I could do a memo to council. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And the other one is on the March 17th distribution list, item number 34. It's correspondence about the West Creek riparian area. So I'm hoping just to give some directions so that a memo can come back from staff about the contents of the correspondence.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, so that's all the other business. I'll now look for a motion to resolve into special closed. Councillor Davis moves it, Councillor Kuhn seconds it. There's a whole bunch of hands are up. Is Davis, Richter, Arneson? I don't know who's. Okay, so Councillor Long, go ahead. Do you want to add an item? Personnel? So Long, personnel. Councillor Ferguson, want to add an item? Sorry? Personnel? Okay. And Councillor Woodward? Personnel, okay. Okay, with that, with those additions, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, carried. And a motion to terminate. Councillor Davis moves it, seconded by Councillor Kunst. Sure. Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed, carried. So how much time do we need to switch over? 10-minute break. Come back at 3:30. Thank you, and thanks everyone.